Today I'm going to provide you with a simple introduction to inheritance tax. Inheritance tax is a tax which is levied on the value of our estate, usually when we pass away. The rate of inheritance tax on death is 40%, which is certainly significant, especially if your beneficiaries aren't prepared for it. So, how do you know if your estate will be liable to inheritance tax? Firstly, it's worth pointing out not everybody's estates will fall into this very simple framework that I'm about to explain, and there are lots of scenarios where the outcome would be different. You should always seek professional advice if you want to address your inheritance tax liability. However, to introduce you to the concept broadly, our estates are liable to inheritance tax if the value is in excess of our nil rate bands. We all have a nil rate band of 325,000, and this is per person, so a married couple will have a combined 650,000. Some of us will also have a residential nil rate band too, and this is for homeowners who intend to leave their property to direct descendants, usually children or grandchildren. And the residential nil rate band is currently £175,000, though it is set to rise in line with inflation. So for a married couple, they'll have a combined £1 million of nil rate bands before their estate becomes liable to inheritance tax. And if one spouse dies, leaving everything to the surviving spouse, they actually won't use their own nil rate bands, and instead the surviving spouse will take on the ownership of all of the assets and will also be able to benefit from the double nil rate bands. For a single person, their nil rate bands would be £325,000 and potentially £175,000, giving them a maximum threshold of £500,000. There are lots of exceptions and caveats to these figures, and I will point out one or two of them now. So firstly, the residential nil rate band of £175,000 is capped at the value of your property. So this means for a married couple, they would need the house to be worth £350,000 or more to benefit from both residential nil rate bands in full. So if, for example, the house was only worth £200,000, they would each have a residential nil rate band of only £100,000 per person, because it's capped at their share of the value of the property. In this case, their joint estate would be liable to inheritance tax when the value exceeded £850,000. Secondly, if your estate is worth over £2 million, you may lose some of these allowances as the residential nil rate band starts to taper away at this point. Also, any gifts made in the 7 years previous will be brought back into the calculation and will form part of the value of your estate. It's even possible for some gifts made before this to have an impact, so this area can become quite complex. Certain gifts are exempt. For example, there's an annual exemption of £3,000 per person per year, which wouldn't be included in that calculation. So hopefully that gives you a brief summary as to what inheritance tax rates are, what the thresholds are, and give you an indication of if your estate is likely to be liable for it. But as I mentioned previously, this is an area where it really is important to take some financial advice.